Do your curls separate like this in the back, and do you have trouble with covering your scalp? Well, I definitely do. I have low density hair, and I also have just thin hair in general, and it can be such a pain trying to cover your scalp when you're styling your hair. So I'm gonna walk you through a full styling routine step by step and show you all the tips and tricks that I do when I style my hair to help cover my scalp more and just have my hair appear fuller in general. I'm also gonna show you some tips for making your hairline in this temple area just look a little bit fuller. So let's go ahead and get started. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Gina and I make videos all about naturally curly hair, and I really try and simplify it for beginners. So I have lots of beginner tutorials here. If you're just learning how to get started with your curls, if you're transitioning, or just learning how to follow the curly girl method, then hopefully my videos will be helpful for you. I first wanted to start off though by saying that it's not a bad thing if your hair is thin. Some people just naturally have thinner hair. Mine is just naturally more low density, so you're just gonna see more of my scalp. It's not really anything that I can do to fix it, but I did want to share some tips and tricks for having it appear fuller, but just trying to not stress about it because of course stress leads to hair loss, so you don't want to be stressing about your scalp showing or anything. Another thing that I wanted to mention is if your hair is high porosity like mine, then it tends to just stick together in general and will just stick to your scalp a lot more. That's totally common when it comes to high porosity hair. It's just because of the nature of the more raised cuticle. It just allows the hair to just tangle more and stick together. So unfortunately, that is just one of the common signs of having high porosity hair. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual styling routine. So I'm first starting off with freshly washed hair, and my hair is damp right now, so I'm just going to add a little bit of water to my ends that are starting to dry. I like applying my products to damp hair versus soaking wet because it helps cut down on my drying time and gives me more volume. I'm also going to be styling my hair upright instead of upside down. I don't recommend styling upside down because that doesn't help the back section at all. I've done a video comparing the two side by side where I did the exact same routine upside down and then right side up, and it makes the world of a difference in the back for volume if you style right side up. So I definitely recommend trying that if you've always styled upside down. Upright styling gives you more control on how the crown area is going to look when it dries. I'm first using the Bounce Curl Clump and Define Cream. This cream is great for adding hydration. I'm mainly focusing it on my dry ends, and I like using a cream underneath a gel, especially in the colder months because my hair tends to dry out when I use just a gel. Then I'm combing all that through just to make sure it's completely covered. I like how a little goes a long way with this cream because it's pretty thick, so I usually only use about a nickel-sized amount for my whole head. Then I'm just breaking up my curls with my hands. So I'm going to be using my Be Hairful brush to style, but you can use a paddle brush or a denman brush, whatever you have on hand. Then you're going to need some clips just for sectioning. For my gel, I'm using this new Bumble and Bumble Anti-Humidity Gel Oil. I'm still testing this out, so more to come soon on that. Another option I would recommend is the InnerSense Eye Create Lift Volumizing Foam. This is a great product if you have low density fine curls because it really helps to give you volume and separation. I would look for products that are more lightweight, not too heavy, especially if you were going to apply them up to your roots, because if your products are too heavy, it could just weigh down your hair and cause more separation at the root. Then you're going to need a small handheld mirror. So I'm going to be sectioning off my hair in 3 different sections. I'm first starting off with the lower half, and I like to take a section that is straight across in the back. This helps me when I'm creating curl clumps. Then I'm just smoothing everything out with the Be Hairful brush and then going in with my gel, and I'm just raking that through. Then using my brush, I'm going to pick up vertical sections. This is key here. And then I'm placing the brush right at the root using the opposite hand. I'm pointing the brush in the downward motion and gliding it down the strand. Once you twist your wrist almost like a curling wind, you get this really nice ribbon-like curl. If you alternate the directions that your curls go, it will prevent them from sticking together and give you more volume. This will also help cover your scalp more if you're alternating direction, but you are going to have to pay attention to which way your curls naturally go from the root because you can't force your curls in the opposite direction that they naturally want to go. I also like to focus on lifting the hair up and away from the root. This is going to help with volume. We don't want to brush our hair downwards. That's just going to pull it down at the root. Then I just use that handheld mirror to check in the back and make sure my scalp is covered. And then I like to separate some of those ringlets with my hands just by kind of breaking them up. This helps give my bottom layer a more full look and prevents my ends from looking too stringy in the back. Now I'm clipping that back out of the way and we're going to start on the middle section. I'm using my nails to try and pick up a section that's pretty straight across. It sort of makes a U shape. Then I'm going in with more of my gel and smoothing this all throughout my hair. I'm still in the process of testing out this gel. This was the first time I used it. It reminded me a lot of the Inner Sense Eye Create Hold because it's very thick, so I could see this being ideal for medium to coarse hair textures. I don't know about for fine hair, it might be too heavy for that, but I have lots of other gel recommendations on my shop page of my blog. I will link down below if you want to check out some more recommendations. So now for the hairline and temple areas. This area tends to get pretty thin on me too if I don't really focus on styling it. So I'm first applying some gel right up to the root because this tends to get pretty frizzy. So I'm just smoothing down at those edges and making sure that gel is applied all the way up to the root. Then I'm going to pick up sections that are pretty small and use the brush to smooth out the frizz right at the root and then create some ringlets starting right at the root. I try and focus on lifting that hair up and away from the scalp. But a lot of times I will see where that section wants to just separate, and that is because the curls in this area, for me at least, go in all different directions. So I definitely have to pick up very tiny sections when I'm creating ringlets. If you just create a big ringlet like this with using a big section, you can kind of look at which way that the curls want to go once you drop it down, and you can see right at the root how they want to separate. So instead of trying to clump them all together, I would focus on picking up very tiny little sections and then using those small sections to create more defined curls. So if you don't have time though, you can just create larger sections like this. Just lift them up away from your root to help give you more volume, and then once you scrunch, they should separate a little bit. So now for the back section that always wants to separate and show the scalp. I'm going to be picking up horizontal sections in this area, and I'm going to focus on using that brush to lift them up and away from the scalp. So I'm lifting them straight up in the air. Then I'm picking up another horizontal section right underneath. That just helps cover the scalp so much more as opposed to picking up vertical sections, because that is sort of pulling the curls into curl clumps vertically, which could separate the curls right at the root and cause more of the scalp to show. So now I'm just shaking out some of the curl clumps, and then I'm picking up my handheld mirror to look at it. So I am standing in front of my bathroom mirror, so that's how I'm able to see the back. You do need 2 mirrors for this. Then I'm using my hands to kind of shake out the curl clumps right at the root and separate them just to make sure everything is covered. And then if I see a curl clump that is just forming in a weird way, or I feel like it's not looking right at the root, I will pick that up and use the brush just to create another ringlet right at the root. So now for the top section, which is probably the most important. I'm just applying a little bit more water to the ends that are starting to dry, and then I'm just combing everything forward, but I'm not going to be styling like this upside down. It was just a little bit easier to apply my gel this way and make sure everything is smoothed in and the gel is applied evenly, but I'm still going to be using the brush to style upright. So then I'm picking up sections that are sort of vertical and sort of horizontal. It's hard to describe for this section, but you can see how I pick up those kind of diagonal sections, and that just helps my hair not just fall forward and fall in my face. If your hair is constantly falling in your face, definitely try styling upright and using a brush to direct the hair in the direction that you want it to go. Especially on this crown area, that's where I'm really focusing on using horizontal sections instead of vertical and pulling my hair up away from my face. This is going to help direct the curls in the right direction and ensure that everything falls in the right place. So again, around the crown area, I'm lifting it up and away from my head, and you can see how much lift that gives me right at the root. And this horizontal section will also help cover the part that always wants to form in the back. So if you have trouble with a cowlick in the back, this is the way to cover that up. Also, if you're trying to avoid having a super defined part, then focus on pulling all of your hair backwards instead of pulling it down on each side of your head. That's just going to cause more of that parting at the top. So I'm being a bit more precise once I get towards the front because I want these ringlets to be pretty small and very defined. So I'm picking up very tiny sections, and then I'm just making sure that they are properly placed exactly where I want them to fall. Because how our hair is when it's wet is how it's going to dry. So here's another example of how I keep my hair up away from my face, picking up those face framing pieces and then twisting it backwards instead of forward. I wouldn't want the curl to go forward because then it will just fall in my face. And I'm kind of using the ringlet to help hook the curls around each other so they stay back. And I have to take a lot smaller sections right here around this temple area because again, this is an area where the scalp always wants to show. So I'm just really trying to look at the curls and the way that they actually want to go starting at the root and I'm using my fingers to apply gel directly at the root and also to finger coil. Separating them into tiny little ringlets instead of one big one is just going to help cover the scalp more because it gives it more volume. So then I'm just checking my part and ensure everything is covered in the back section around the crown area, and then I like to place my hands right at the root and just shake gently. You don't want to cause any frizz or break up all the curl clumps, but it kind of helps to break them up at the root just to make sure the scalp is evenly covered, and this just helps lift the hair up off of the scalp right at the root. So then I'm applying more gel and water to my hands and mixing that gel, and then I'm going to go around and scrunch my hair. You don't want to have dry hands when you scrunch your hair because that can just cause frizz because our hair is wet. So if your hair is wet, use wet hands to touch it and scrunch it to not create any frizz. And then if I see any sections where the scalp is starting to show or if the curls are separating, I'll just pick up my brush and touch up those areas. I really try and focus on scrunching the root to give it more definition right at the root, and I'm also using my finger sort of like a claw to help separate some of those curl clumps just at the root to make sure that my scalp is covered in that area, but I'm not separating all the curl clumps all the way down to the ends, just right at the root. And then I usually just check the back one last time before I'm ready to go in and diffuse and make sure everything is covered. And as you can see, my part is really only a couple inches long. It only goes around the top section of my head, and I don't really have it parting around the crown area because this is where we focused on pulling the hair back to cover the scalp at the crown. Then I went ahead and plop diffused my hair upside down off camera. I have a video all about how I plop diffuse where I just hover the diffuser. I usually do that until my hair has a cast in it to help protect it from frizz. And then once my hair has that cast, that is when I go in and actually try and get more lift and volume at the root by touching the diffuser to my scalp and lifting it up. But I usually wait until my hair has that cast to prevent frizz from forming. So again, you can check out that video first to see how I hover and plop diffuse to get definition and also prevent frizz when diffusing. But this is one of my best tricks for getting volume at the root, is to place the diffuser teeth right at your root and then lift. I also do this upside down to help give that crown area more lift. This is going to also help cover the scalp as well. Again, at this point, my hair is like 80 to 90% dry. It's really just my roots that are a little bit still damp, and that is when I usually do this trick. Then I'm just checking the back one last time and everything looks to be covered. I usually finish air drying just to let everything set up, and once it is completely 100% dry, that is when I go in and shake out my roots using dry hands. So at this point, my hair is totally dry at the root, my hands are dry, and then I'm using my hands just to lift the hair up away from the scalp. You can also use a pick like this, and that just helps lift the hair up off the scalp again, especially if it starts to get kind of stuck to your head, like from the gel or from your hair products. This helps lift it up in a way. So you just want to place the pick right at the root and then give it a lift, and that's just going to help separate the curls at the root and cover your scalp a lot more. I don't always use a pick because I don't want to create any frizz with my hair. Picks usually tend to work better for a lot tighter curl patterns like type 4 hair, so I can usually just use my hands and I don't get any frizz from fluffing out the roots. So here is the finished look and the final wet to dry comparison. You can definitely see how much more the scalp is covered. There's one more hack that I wanted to share with you, and this is sort of like last resort or if you had a special event or something, and that is using a root touch-up spray or just using an eyeshadow to help fill in your hairline a little bit. I've done a video about this on how to cover your roots when you were going in between colorings. I used to color my hair all the time, and my roots would always grow out, and so I would use eyeshadow to touch it up. So although that video is old, I will link it for you down below, and that's just a really easy way to make your hairline appear thicker. A lot of people do that when they're doing their makeup, but you can also use a root touch-up spray. I think L'Oreal makes one. I've never tried it before, but it's basically a tinted spray that you spray onto your hair, and it helps give your roots some color, and that just in general can make your hair appear thicker. That's not something I would do every day, but if I was really concerned about it, or if it was a special event or something like that, or if I was getting pictures done from the back, then maybe I would try something like that. So that is it for today's video. If you have any techniques for covering your scalp that you like to do, definitely leave them down below, or any of your favorite products. If you have lower density hair, I would love to hear your product suggestions as well. I will link you to all the products that I use in today's video in the description box down below if you want to check any of them out. Like I said, I'm still testing out the Bumble and Bumble one, so more to come on that soon. I need to try it for several more wash days before I report back, but I will definitely keep you posted. And if you want to follow me over on Instagram and TikTok, I do always post on my Instagram stories whenever I'm testing out products, and I always do check-ins just to show you guys how they are working out for me. So thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not already, and I will talk to you in next week's video. Bye everyone.